Okay, to start Premiere, you can either open a past project or go to New Project. You want to name the project, and this will just be the Premiere document. This won't be the sequence. So I'll name it Intro Demo. Hit Browse and select where you want the video to go. So do Premiere. The time code is fine unless you want to change it to film, but I don't think you would. Audio samples are usually easier to work with in milliseconds. And capture format, this is just if you're using your camera and hooking it up to the computer to capture your footage, which most people don't do anymore. From there, we're going to get this layout, but notice there's no sequence. Before, Premiere CS6 used to go ahead and bring up the sequence tab next. This one doesn't, so you want to go to File, New, Sequence. And you can pick whichever your format is. For us, we have HDV 1080 with 30p. We want it progressive so that the lines scan down instead of interlaced where they go every other way. You could change that if you wanted, if you did film an interlace, but that's dependent on how your footage was captured. From there, you could also change to like a digital SLR, and they have their 1080p, so for us, we're actually usually filming on that. We may want to try that preset. It depends. And then for sequence 1, this is what you would name your sequence, and this is what it will default to export. Now, you can change the name in export, that's not a problem, but we'll go ahead and call this Demo Sequence, and hit OK. It's not finding the cloud libraries, but right now I'm not going to be using those anyway. What we can do is we can import our footage one of 3 ways. We can go to File, Import, and we can find one of our movie clips here. I could go to File, right-click Import, and find a movie clip here if I wanted. I could also go to Media Browser and then browse for footage somewhere on my computer. So if I went to my desktop, I know I usually kept 1 or 2 demo videos on there just for this type of thing. Now, whichever file is the dominant one, you want to go ahead and drop on your timeline. So you can either put your files directly on the timeline, or if you wanted, you could edit them here before you put them on the timeline. It looks like the DSLR was the correct one to choose, but had I not chosen something that matched my footage, I would have gotten a message here that says keep existing settings or change settings. And whichever one you want. If you want it to match your footage, you can hit change. And if you want it to just be the default, you would say keep standard settings. So from here, if I wanted this to start maybe here, I could put a mark in. I would go to where I want it to end and put a mark out. What that does is it lets me cut the clips on the timeline here. I know that's pretty small, so I'm going to zoom in by clicking down here, doing that. Now this is really only about almost 2 seconds. But if I wanted, I could also cut it on the timeline. And I can do that with these tools up here. This tool is your selection tool. This is going to be cut. This one just lets you shrink in and out of the clip. And then if I hold it down, I should get the rolling edit tool, which clips both of my footage, and it should lengthen one as it shrinks the other. And that can be really handy if you realize you want the one scene to extend a little longer without re-editing everything. It's my slip tool, which means it's hard to see, but I'm changing where this clip starts. So I'm not actually changing the duration of the time I want referenced, but what I am doing is I'm changing this point in the clip because it should have started here, right? It should have continued right after this, but instead I told it to slip all the way back to the beginning of the clip. The pen tool allows you to edit, and right now all I have to edit is this little line right here, and that's going to be my fade in and fade out. So if I wanted to add points and manually adjust a fade in and fade out, I could. I could also do a rectangle tool or an ellipse tool if I wanted to do a fill or do any masking. I tend to prefer to do that in After Effects though, but for simple ones, Premiere will work as well. And I bet... oh, my fade in and fade out would be here. So I can also do an unlink, which unlinks the audio from the video. So see, these two are linked, these two are unlinked. So I could delete out the video and put in another video. I can also right click and go to speed duration. So speed duration is if I wanted this to play slower, I might be able to change it to 75. And it's not too bad. Remember, persistence of vision is about 16 frames a second, and this was filmed at 30 frames a second or exported at 30 frames a second. So as long as I'm not getting close to that 16 frames a second, it should look all right. In animation, sometimes you can get away with 12 frames a second. But I know as I say this, I'm making people that love 60 frames a second cry. So really just use your best judgment. We're getting more and more where faster frame rates are approved rather than lower ones. So if I wanted to put part of this clip in, what I could do is click on it, and I can either do an insert, which is going to insert it right where my cursor is, boop, and it inserts it here, but it moves the rest of it over. So it will still keep my previous clips, it just moves them. I could also do the next one over called an override, and that will just copy that footage over my clip. So it doesn't move it, it just gets rid of it. I can also just drag and drop the way I've been doing. And I could put it over. If they're next to each other, I can have kind of some room for effects, but only if I left some at the beginning of the end of the clip, which I did. I could also export a frame, so if I decided I wanted this to be a still image, I could click on that button and then select which way I'd want to save it, if I want to extend just that one frame or that one clip out longer. Now, for here, if I wanted it to go to the beginning of my mark in or the end of my mark out, I can. And I could hit play so that it'll play that part. I can also click so I can step forward 1 or 2 frames. For special effects, those are going to be over here under effects, and I have a whole new menu of Lumiere presets, or Lumetri presets, letting my film studies show. And this really kind of is like our old 3-way color corrector with just a lot more options. So if I wanted it to look cinematic, I could drop it on, double click, and what I'll get is I get the lumetri scope, so it tells me where all my colors are and kind of what range they are, where the intensity is. And as you scrub, you'll notice that this changes, as it'll show in real time how your colors are adjusting. And I also know that a lot of them are kind of really hot because they're right at the top of that level or right at the bottom. And so if I were to watch this on an old TV or something that doesn't have good contrast, I might lose some of that color. So under my effects controls, I have basic correction, where I could maybe select something that's white and tell this is the white balance for the frame. I can adjust the temperature up to be warmer or cooler. I can tint the entire frame if I wanted. I'm not going to do that. And this also gives us a lot of the controls that you're probably used to in RAW. Like you can adjust exposure. Obviously going too far or too soft will cause it to degrade the image. But I have a little bit of range where I can brighten this up or soften it down. I could also bump up the contrast or lower it. So if I wanted to get a little more of those blacks to show, I could lower it slightly. If I want it to look even brighter or even more glowing, I could bump it up. And then I can work just on certain tones, like I can make the highlights brighter, I can make the shadows darker or brighter, and really just have a lot of adjustments for this. My saturation, the amount of color, I can bump it up or down, but once again notice that the more I play with this, the more I'm breaking down the image and getting these pixels. In fact, I was kind of amused the shadows let me go that high, and I think I am kind of pixelating it a little with those shadows. Or at least I was hiding some of the pixelation a little easier when the shadows were so dark. But I can do curves, so I could go ahead and click here. Oopsie, and I desaturated the whole thing. So I can really change how the reds, how the blues move in it. So I can make an overall more red tint or maybe a little less of a red tint. That's what the curves lets me do. And then this is what we were talking about before, where I had my color wheel, my three-way color corrector, where I can adjust my midtones, my shadows. I can tint all of them separately. I can add less light or more light. And then there's just a bunch of other effects I could use, and I keep accidentally desaturating this whole clip. So that really takes a lot of that color correction we did before and puts it in one place. Now, audio effects are still in the same area. I can look for obsolete audio effects because it's saying that most of these it doesn't want to use anymore. But I can still find my dehiss and reverbs and such like that. I can also go to my audio transitions, and my good old crossfade is here. Constant gain, which keeps the tones around, and constant power, which keeps it from dropping off too much, and an exponential fade if I wanted. Video effects are the same thing. I still have kind of my old classics like keying. If I wanted to maybe put something or remove it in an area, I have a luma key. I have a color key and an alpha adjust. Once again, you're still going to get slightly better results in After Effects with this, but it's a lot better than it used to be. So I could go ahead and throw a luma key on. So I think I can throw a luma key on. There it is. I don't know why I didn't see it before, sorry. And I can just kind of mess with it until it reads the areas I want to be transparent And then kind of the classic color key where you just select the color you want to key and it'll make that color vanish. I can adjust the tolerance and it'll make more and more of that transparent, but it would be extremely hard to key in a particle system, so unless you're looking for some really like 80s, 90s granular effects, I wouldn't really do that. I'll delete all those. I can stylize, transform, use all my kind of old cheesy video clips, put time code on it, and I can go to noise if I want it to appear a little more film-like, if I want the old film style. And once again, there's better if you search online enough. And then for video transitions, I can kind of go to the classics. Remember, dissolve is their fancy name for fade in and fade out. It's a dissolve, so I could put my cross dissolve since I have enough of the other clip to fade into. If I had, let's say, started this right at the beginning of the clip, let me get more of the beginning of the clip. If you notice, if I put those together, it won't actually let me do a cross dissolve because there's nothing for that to fade into. I don't have footage over here because a cross dissolve is really like that. A cross dissolve is looking at, okay, look, you have your footage and some of it's above and you're going to overlap it. And that's why if you went and adjusted the opacity of these, you could kind of customize those cross dissolves instead of using theirs if you wanted. Now, once you've gone through these areas, Adobe Story. I thought they canceled Adobe Story. I think they are canceling it, but I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. But you save. Remember, you have to save your project. This uses pointer files, so if I go through and move any of the files from where they were, it won't find it anymore. I'll just get yellow and red warning error messages. At least I think that's what it still does. And then once I'm done, I can go to File, Export Media. I could also, if I wanted to give my sheet to someone who is, let's say, using Premiere, I can export that as well. Now I have to find where that export went. It's the problem of having way too many screens, right? So, or it's just like, nope. Try again. File, Export Media. There we go, finally. You probably want to match sequence settings if you just want a quick and dirty render, but that's not going to let you do a lot. The MPEG's going to be kind of polluted. And it won't be easy to kind of mix around, so I usually do an H.264. I could put a comment if I wanted, like, rough video. And then I can go to output name. Once again, it's going to give it the name of your sequence, but you just click here, make sure it's saving to the right area. If you want to customize it, you can maximize render quality, you can use previews, set start and end time code, and just change a bunch of different options. If we wanted, we could put another filter over it. We can customize exactly how large it is if we didn't want it to match source. And then, same thing, we could change it to the different sound types if we wanted. Right now it defaults to AAC. Do Dolby Digital. Oh, and here's the captions, and let me show you how that changed, and then we'll go ahead and export this. So, right now assembly, it's going to be basic, just putting it together. Editing, that's where we defaulted. Color is it puts our wheel right over here, so we can kind of see what's happening and adjust those colors in real time. Hey. And then, cool. And then what you do is you can add effects. They have a customized effect, so it'll just get you to that point. I'd been clicking up here, but if you hit effects, it goes automatically to that. Audio, same thing. We'll show you more levels, more mixing options. And then graphics, is under here, Essential Graphics. If we browse, this is where a lot of the captions are now. So if I wanted a credits list, I could click on the credits, and right now I'm getting these error messages. That means it's not recognizing the toolkit. So if I clicked on this and hit edit, or we drug it in, boop, and hit edit, it's going to tell you unable to connect to Typekit, missing fonts cannot be resolved. And it's a little annoying, but not the worst thing ever. If you look at it, you'll see all these little blips, but it's really easy to fix. Just click on it, go to edit, hopefully. And then if you go to where the type is, just change it to a font you know you have. So we could do like a real quick Arial. And I know that I'm probably making some people cry by suggesting you ever do titles in Arial, but right now we're just trying to see them. And once you fix those, your text will start to show up. So see, now that it's faded in, you can see that these are in Arial, I can read them, the other ones I can't, so I would just keep doing that. At this point you can ask, hey, is there a way to change all of it? And that I don't know. I'm a little newer to this interface, so this is just what I've been doing. I looked for a title replacement on the first part, but hopefully because, especially if you're using your own computer, we'll get to this. And then libraries. Once again, that's something you should have access to that I don't have because of the school server. And from there, we'll go to File, Export, Media. And let's wait for that to open one more time. Maybe. It's still spinning, so I won't hit it too many times. Gosh, this is taking forever. I guess in the meantime, I'm getting a lot of red rendering lines. Just to review that, you could go to Sequence, Render, Render Effects, Render In and Out, Render Selection, Render Audio. Or you could just hit Enter, and usually that's the shortcut key to render. Now, at this point, I just told the computer to do two things at once, so it's more than likely going to freeze. Don't know why I'm having such a problem with this file export. Click in the timeline, because a lot of times it won't give you the option for it unless you do. We'll do File, Export, Media one more time. There we go. Now it worked. Making sure that's saving, which we just set. You end by export. And once this whole thing decodes, you'll have your video. I won't make you watch that, it's already gone long enough. But thank you very much.